Homelander's God complex hits a different level, the boys try to kill each other, and we get some backstory on what to expect for the next series in the VCU in Vought Rising. Welcome back, everybody. We are here talking about the 5th and final season of The Boys, and we are breaking down episode 4. We'll be discussing all the details, connections to the prequel series, and all the major moments from this episode, which I definitely feel like was more of a mixed bag for me personally. Before we begin, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for all things The Boys as we continue our weekly coverage of each new episode all season long. We've got some internal fighting, unexpected insults, and a parasite that turns the boys into some little toddlers trying to kill each other, so let's break it all down, full spoilers ahead. We open with Homelander admiring an old picture of him and Ryan as Firecracker walks in and Homelander immediately smells his father's scent on her. Now Firecracker pivots fast, claiming it was just a scent of their media prep, but Homelander isn't focused on her secrets. Right now he's only focused on his destiny. Homelander shares with her that he's received a wonderful message from an angel that foretold his destiny in becoming God. Now, Firecracker plays it cool despite clearly being in disagreement of him believing that he's the Messiah. Homelander finally needs her again because she was the only one that saw the specialness in him, as he wants her to spread the word of his coming. He wants her to use her religious followings and to use Vought's media machine to broadcast that he is the Messiah. He's not content with being a superhero anymore, he wants to be worshipped. Now, keeping the religious vibes going, we cut to Ryan back from the dead like Jesus as he wakes up with Butcher and Tara by his bedside. Butcher tries to lift Ryan's spirits by comparing what just happened to him and his dad by spoiling Star Wars, as Butcher tells Ryan that he shouldn't have went toe-to-toe with Homelander and he should have waited for the virus to be completed because he's their best chance in defeating Homelander. Now, Ryan feels that Butcher doesn't really or hasn't really cared about him, and as Butcher goes to get him some water, as he returns, he finds an empty bed as Ryan is gone. Now my question is, where does Ryan go from here? Will he reach out to Zoe and team up with her to try to kill Butcher? Will he recover on his own and rejoin the boys for a round 2 against his dad again? Again, I'm very curious to see what they do with Ryan moving forward, but let me know what you all hope to see with Ryan in the comments below. Meanwhile, with the boys, we see MM is back to his old self as Frenchie continues on rebuilding the virus from practically scratch, and he needs a free weeks to do so. Now, with both Ryan and Annie missing, it is time for the boys to take a trip to Fort Harmony to find the last of V1 before Homelander does. Now, let's break down this week's subplots that I found to be very underwhelming, starting with Annie. Annie goes to see her dad, a character we've never met before, and he's been in hiding for the last 20 years. Now we meet Annie's brother by the name of Mason and her stepmom, and the initial vibes are that they are basically pro-Homelanders, which later on Annie's dad explains why there's signs in support of Homelander, but turns out Mason is exactly that. A snitch who calls the cops the second he realizes Starlight is there. Annie tries to connect with her brother, and it was one of the most pointless scenes of this episode for me, and surprise, surprise, Mason does indeed call the cops on Annie. We have these heavy-handed PSA moments, one for example being her dad explaining why he left because Annie's mom used the whole she's a chosen one, and that was something that was just overbearing for him, so that's why he left the family. Then we have this moment where the cop shows up to drag Annie away, which leads to a standoff where her dad finally has a moment of morality. Now the cop ultimately leaves and gives them an hour to say their goodbyes. We'll circle back to this plot at the end, but I'm going to be honest, this was the worst part of this episode for me personally. Now look, I get it. The showrunners want to mirror our current political climate. They want to show the polarization of the Starlighters being considered terrorists and how it is, again, a very real-world coded situation. But was this the time for a family detour in the middle of the finale of this season? I don't think so. I don't think we need to spend that much time on meeting Annie's dad, who was only brought up one time in season 1. Like, I just feel like this whole plot was just such a waste of time. And I also thought the story was so on the nose with the performances to me across the board, and these scenes were just so flat and boring, including from Annie herself. Again, yes, I get the point of her getting the closure from her past in order for her to move forward to what's going on in her situation with Hughie and the boys, and also having the guilt of what's going on with the Starlighters being taken away, having their rights taken away and whatnot. But again, the Starlighter stuff to me last season and this season has been so underwritten, and it feels so heavy-handed. Again, I want to be very clear here that I am very aware that The Boys has always been a great satire about the political landscape, but then when the show has these moments where it's not about the characters and then it just starts to focus on we need to mirror what's going on in the news, to me it loses the bite that made me love this show to begin with. But as I digress, let's move on to our next subplot, and that's what's going on with Firecracker. Back at Vought, Soldier Boy learns that Homelander is headed to Fort Harmony, where Soldier Boy was first injected with the V1. Now Sage does what she does best, and that's playing 4D chess. She antagonizes him by basically encouraging Soldier Boy to get the V1 before his son does. She's orchestrating a scenario where Soldier Boy destroys the V1 before Homelander can get his hands on it, as she knows that if Homelander becomes truly immortal and untouchable, Sage loses her leverage. Now it's here that we get some confirmation about an online theory that's been floating around for a few weeks now. Many people believed online that either Ryan or Sam from Gen V or a clone reveal from the comics was coming because Black Noir has been completely silent all season long, but it is here that gets debunked. We see Black Noir with his mask off, showing us that it's the same person who replaced the original Noir and he's now talking again. He admits that he's been method acting and he stays silent to truly embody the spirit of the original Noir, but he's finally breaking character because he is pissed off with what the Deep did by taking Stan in last week's episode. But it's here we see Noir gives the Deep a reality check. Don't get too comfortable being the golden boy because now that Daddy's home, referring to Soldier Boy, the pecking order will always default to him. But let's move on to what's going on with Firecracker. She's gathered Ashley, Old Father, and a Vought executive, and the Worm, who we met back in episode 1, to brainstorm how to market Homelander as the literal Messiah. They're pitching some truly unhinged, terrible ideas, but Firecracker lands on a big one. Her idea is to rebrand Homelander as the God of America. Now, this was actually social commentary satire that I found to be funny, considering right now in our real world, the president's beefing with the Pope and also having had shared similar ideas about having more churches dedicated to real Americans who support him as the president, as he sees himself as our savior of the country. Again, for me, I found this week's subplots to be the weakest parts of the episode because it was so heavy-handed in its messaging and it was missing nuance. But despite some holes in logic here, luckily the boys and Homelander and Soldier Boy delivered some of the good stuff that we're about to break down. Back with the boys on their way to Fort Harmony, Hughie literally stumbles upon a few dead bodies that have been ripped apart as Frenchie's fears about a beast lurking in the woods are starting to become a reality. As they approach the hospital, our golden boy Hughie snaps out of nowhere as he unloads about Annie. As he shares his thoughts about how he feels about Annie and calls her a bitch for sometimes being selfish, which completely catches everyone off guard because we know Hughie doesn't talk like that. As they get closer to the hospital doors, they find a field filled with dead animals with their insides hanging out. From here, it becomes more obvious that there's something in the air making the boys angry at one another as Hughie now goes at MM and Butcher goes after Kimiko, but luckily Frenchie calms them down for now. Meanwhile, we see Homelander and Soldier Boy are close by as they talk about having a shared experience with Stormfront, which again, we can see the mention of her name catches Soldier Boy's attention. Which, by the way, is one of the many ways of basically setting up more seeds for the Vought Rising prequel series coming out next year. Now inside the hospital, the boys find more dead bodies downstairs. Now Frenchie, being the chemist of the group, he realizes they've been infected by a rage parasite that forces people to kill each other. Now, the only reason Frenchie is immune is because of years of using drugs. Now, Butcher sees that Homelander and Soldier Boy are close by and they want to fight them. Him and MM wants to go outside. But luckily, Frenchie yet again has to step in and reminds them that is suicide to fight them at this point and they must focus on finding the V1 instead. Again, to me, this is the best part of this episode, but there are definitely some moments of logic that didn't make any sense. Now, they end up finding where the last of the V1 should be, but it's gone, and they believe a Soup, who was a part of Soldier Boy's first team by the name of Bombsight, and who, by the way, is an original character for this show, but also for Vought Rising, and will be a main character in that show, was the one who took it. Meanwhile, Soldier Boy and Homelander are literally right above the boys, and despite the boys arguing at full volume, somehow the man with X-ray vision and super hearing in Homelander doesn't hear them or see them fighting right below them. Again, to me, the plot armor in this particular part of the episode was thick enough to stop a nuke in this scene. Again, after not finding the V1, the rage parasite takes over completely, and the episode turns into a game of hide and kill. Butcher attacks Hughie and Kimiko, who's apparently forgotten how to speak at this point, while MM and Hughie have a shootout with one another. It was a chaotic moment, but honestly, it felt a little forced to create unnecessary drama. Meanwhile, Homelander and Soldier Boy are also losing it, as Homelander starts getting to Soldier Boy, calling him a fraud and a fake tough guy, and he only joined the V1 trials because he was jealous of his brother. Soldier Boy finally has had enough and locks Homelander in a suit-proof testing room filled with atomic radiation. Now, while looking to kill Hughie, we see Butcher finds a weakened Homelander, and he gets a kick out of seeing Homelander looking so sickly and being put in timeout by his dad. Butcher goes on about Homelander's God complex and how he'll never find happiness and calls him out for almost killing his son Ryan. Butcher mentions the virus, but Homelander realizes that Butcher doesn't have the virus anymore, and he knows he has no way to stop him, as he promises he'll kill all of the non-believers. Butcher responds by returning the threat and saying to Homelander that he's going to kill him before it's all said and done. Now, during all this, Frenchie is caught and chased down by Soldier Boy, but managed to get him in the room with what's causing everyone to go insane with rage, and it is Bombsight, aka Quinn. Him and Soldier Boy hate each other, and that hate still runs in Quinn's blood, hence the parasite. Again, I would imagine we'll get more of this beef and this relationship in the prequel of Vought Rising. Now, in the most convenient way possible, we see Frenchie get Soldier Boy to kill Bombsight with his nuclear soup killing blast by upsetting him, and the effects of the parasite ends and everyone's back to normal. Now, let me know in the comments below if I'm wrong about this, but didn't they establish that whenever Soldier Boy unleashes that blast, anything near him gets completely destroyed? So my question is, how in the world did Frenchie and Butcher, who by the way were standing right there, survive without a scratch? Man, the power scale in this episode was all over the place, and again, I found this to be the best part of the episode, but it was definitely kind of over the top, very silly, and a lot of stuff just didn't make sense. Again, talking about convenience, we see Soldier Boy visibly shaken up by killing Quinn, and he actually lets the boys go. It's clear that there's deep history there to explore in the prequel series, but him letting the boys escape felt a bit too convenient and easy for me. Now, back with Annie, after being told to leave within the hour, we see her casually leaving after having dinner with the family as they say their goodbyes. Annie's dad leaves her with some final words about not giving up on people they love, which to me just felt like, again, just like a cutout from a CW scene. We see Homelander finally escapes the room and is ready to kill his dad, but he sees Soldier Boy has been crying and he wants Homelander to actually kill him in a moment, but he doesn't and he walks away. Again, I can't help but to feel like this episode was more of a setup for the future of the boys with that prequel series, more so than focusing on what's going on in this final season. Now we end what I consider to be the weakest episode of the season so far, with Kimiko and Frenchie breaking up because they want different things in life, which to me points towards one of them probably dying sooner rather than later. Annie's back and she apologizes to Hughie for leaving, as we see Butcher and MM apologize to each other as well, as they watch a special announcement about Homelander on television. Our last scene has us at Homelander's new church for Americans, as we see Old Father uses his special abilities, which is a sonic scream. This ability allows him to generate an extremely powerful scream on high altitude from his vocal cords in his mouth. This ability also helps him to gather groups of people to his side and support his various religious causes, which we see him use on the crowd as he introduces Homelander to the stage and spreads the message that Homelander is their Lord and Savior as everyone screams his name. So if it wasn't clear, I thought episode 4 had some interesting moments, some interesting character beats, and had a huge teaser for Vought Rising, but to me, the writing in this episode was very bad. Yes, on one hand, we're getting some massive world building for Vought Rising that's coming next year, but on the other hand, the logic in this episode was hanging by a thread. The performances with the Annie stuff just wasn't working for me, and it just felt like a PSA. And again, the fights, The parasite stuff had its moments, but it was the power scaling and the logic, again, that just didn't make sense. That said, even when The Boys is being too heavy-handed, the core character drama is what keeps me locked in. I do hope that next week gets back on track and feels more balanced and we can avoid these unnecessary subplots because, again, if you also have been watching my reviews, I have really been enjoying this season. I thought episodes 1, 2, and 3 were really good. It reminded me of the old boys of season 1, 2, and 3, but this episode felt like an unused episode from season 4, which again I think was the weakest season of this show so far. So again, every show has its one bad episode, and I hope that this is it, and next week we get things going again. That will conclude my breakdown of The Boys Season 5, Episode 4. Let me know in the comments below how you all felt about this episode. Am I bugging? Am I tripping? Was this the best episode of the season so far? Or do you all agree with me that the subplots didn't really work? They were underwritten. They were executed poorly. The stuff that was the best was what was going on at the hospital, but even that had some logical issues. Let me know your thoughts, theories, what you all hope to see in the weeks ahead in the comments below. Thank you all for watching or listening to this week's breakdown. If you're watching this on YouTube, I appreciate you all. Do me a favor, if you enjoyed this week's breakdown, hit the like button. Even if you disagree with my commentary, I would appreciate you all to consider hitting the like button, hitting the hype button, sharing this video, sharing your thoughts in the comments below, and also stick around for more boys coverage by subscribing to the channel today. If you are listening to this via podcast, I appreciate all my podcast listeners out there. If you all can do me a favor, let me know your thoughts in the comments below in this episode, but also stick around and follow the podcast, and I would love it if you all can give me a 5-star review. Alrighty, y'all know what time it is. We got Daredevil this week. We got the finale of Invincible. We got more Euphoria to talk about, and we got some movies coming out this week. So for all that goodness, again, stick around by subscribing. In the meantime, I thank you all for the support. Don't forget, you all are awesome. Stay safe, and I'll catch you all on the next breakdown.